Good morning, y'all. Good morning. Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. Yes, yes. Coffee Conversations with Greg J. We are up and about, up and at 'em. How are you today? Feeling good? I want to check in with us. It's Thursday, June 25th. Uh, yeah, coronavirus just messing us up, isn't it? We're still on quarantine. I know a lot of you have gotten used to it or are, okay with it, like working from home and all of that. Some of us, your situations, some circumstances have been deeply affected, but you're soldiering on. The main thing is we see a spike in this coronavirus across the country, is that we need to be safe. And safety, I think, just means, wearing the mask, staying at home if you can. I know things are trying to open up, but take your time and getting out there, out and about, but certainly take the precautions that they're recommending so that you can still be above ground, that you can still be around. I know some of us have lost loved ones to the coronavirus. I'm going to give it a shout out in a moment of perspective from my friend Michael Wilson. Found out he passed away last week. It's one of my key sound people, on some of the stages. If you know me around Southern California, then you know that I produce some festivals and community events. And one of my go-to guys in terms of sound, found out that he, passed away from Corona in connection with some other things that he was dealing with, and a little sad with that. And the whole thing is, we see the headlines that it's increasing. We see the headlines that it's spiking, and I'm just imploring the village today just to be safe out there. The other level of safety I'd like to share with you all would be our mental health. Man, it's a lot going on out here, and we got our favorite therapist. Ms. Shiva comes on to share with us some techniques on maintaining our mental balance, and prayer and meditation probably always also works. The whole thing is just about wellness, your wellness out there in these days and time. It's crazy. In these here United States, crazy world, we're seeing a lot. We're seeing a lot of violence. We're seeing a lot of hatred and lots of stuff going on. And we need all hands on deck right now to withstand what we are going through in this country. So you got to keep well so that you can fight the good fight, right? All right, Coffee Conversations with Greg J is on. Listen, watch, and share. Tell a friend. We're on right now. Facebook Live, beachcityradio.com, Coffee Conversations with Greg J, Beach City Radio, Beach City Perspectives. Got a great show today for you. Looking forward to this conversation. Let's go to the headlines. People got complacent, and it's coming back and biting us, quite frankly, and that's how the CEO of the Houston Methodist Hospital has described the acute coronavirus resurgence in Texas and the U.S. That unwelcome and alarming reemergence is wiping out 2 months of progress in America, with spiraling infections in the South and West. Hospital administrators and health experts have warned that politicians and the public, tired of being cooped up, are letting a disaster unfold as the U.S. is back near its late April daily cases peak of 36,400. The killings of 2 African Americans in differing circumstances bore striking similarities in that both cases took months for any action on the part of law enforcement in Georgia and Kentucky. A prosecutor has announced that 3 men have been indicted on murder charges in the killing of Ahmaud Arbery in coastal Georgia. And in a grand jury, they've indicted Travis McMichael, Greg McMichael, and William Roddy Bryan Jr. on malice and felony murder charges in Arbery's death. Arbery was slain February 23rd when Greg and Travis McMichael, a white father and son, armed themselves and pursued the 25-year-old black man who was jogging in their neighborhood. Meantime, a call has reverberated for weeks online and at demonstrations nationwide. Arrest the police who killed Breonna Taylor. It's been 3 months since Taylor's shooting death in Louisville, Kentucky. So far, police have dismissed one of the 3 detectives who fired into her apartment in March. Protesters, celebrities, and others are wondering why the case is taking so long. President Trump plans to kick off Independence Day with a showy display at the national monument known as Mount Rushmore. It's drawing sharp criticism from Native Americans who view the structure as a desecration of land violently stolen from them, and they're planning protests of Trump's July 3rd visit. And it comes amid an American reckoning over racism and a reconsideration of the symbolism of monuments around the globe. In January, a black man in Detroit was wrongfully arrested after being misidentified by face recognition technology. Robert Julian Borchak Williams was detained for 30 hours. And when he pointed out to police that he didn't look like the closed circuit TV footage of the suspect, one detective said, "I guess the computer got it wrong." Experts and activists have objected to the use of facial recognition by law enforcement for years, as the technology has been shown to display racial bias. Well, you can just figure that part out on Facebook, because I know I get tagged. Facebook thinks I'm the actor Dorian Harewood. I get his tags all the time. I was found out a good friend of mine was celebrating her anniversary to her husband, and Dr. Kwaku Person Lynn, he might be even listening today, and Facebook thought I was him, and we just don't look alike at all. So yeah, y'all need to do some more work on their facial recognition. The headlines are just reflecting everything that we are going through out here. I mean, it's just a lot going on. And here on Coffee Conversations with Greg J, we are unapologetically sharing perspectives. We bring in experts. We bring in Tuesday. We had a dynamic show. We answered the question, where are the preachers and all of this? And we had a panel of preachers, clergy for Black Lives. And I felt like that was a really, really profound conversation. And, we search across the country. We are a global platform. We're based in Long Beach, yes, but we are a global platform. And we search around the world to get a global, culturally relevant perspective. And we reach over to the Midwest there, and we found a young man, a rising star in the world of Black intellectuals. He's a professor at Northeastern Illinois University. And today we're just going to kind of, chop it up about, hip hop and social justice and the flag protest. He's got a book, and he's got some articles and literature that I'm sure he's going to share with us. And I want you guys to hear this young man, and let's enjoy the dialogue this morning over our Kalimba song coffee. And let me just bring him right on in, and he can tell us all about his credentials. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Sunni Ali. Good morning, my brother.
Good morning.
There he is. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you.
How you feeling today?
Great.
Yes, sir. Family good in this COVID-19 environment? Everything cool?
Yes, we are definitely trying to social distance, and as well as just be mindful of venturing in different parts of the city here, because sometimes people are not as conscientious about social distancing as they need to be.
Man, ain't that the truth? I had to back some people up off me yesterday. You hate to you don't want to be rude, but it's just like, can you please back up off me?
Yes.
Now, Northeastern Illinois University is out there in Chicago.
Yes, correct.
Okay, everybody. So you see Chicago, Illinois, representing the Chicago Bulls, ladies and gentlemen. Very
Right.
good.
I think we're going to represent the Bulls back in the day, not today.
Ah,
Yeah. Yeah.
good stuff. All right. So Dr. Ali, man, there's so much going on out here. I mean, these are unprecedented times. And I mean, in my lifetime, I've been a part of a lot of situations and circumstances in the struggle, but I've not seen, anything like this. We're in a pandemic. With the advent of technology and social media, we're seeing right before our very eyes the unmitigated violence against people of color. Tell me, what is your just start off with just kind of a broad brush analysis of what we're seeing and how the current movement fits into our demand for equal rights.
Yeah, I mean, right now we are definitely experiencing critical societal issues, almost apocalyptic in nature, right? With our interactions and as well as some of our challenges in this society. I think we're also seeing intersectionality of social justice movements that have been around for the past 50 years, uh, being able to emerge better and more clearly due to people actually coming together more, unfortunately, through the murder of George Floyd. So I remain optimistic, not so much pessimistic about change agency, and particularly our young people. I think there was a lot of cynicism cast toward young people, especially Generation Z, being so socially media driven. But what that has allowed them to do is interconnect, be able to work together, and be more pronounced and collectively challenging the system in terms of coming out and protesting and actually integrating, not so much assimilating, but being able to integrate the movement so it's so diverse, which is awesome. So I think we although we have these challenges, there is a certain consciousness that has emerged. I was talking with a few of my colleagues earlier this morning, and I compared it to almost like the late 80s and early 90s, right? When there was a time of Black nationalism was emerging. You had people were up in arms against the first Desert Storm War that took place in the early 90s with George Bush Sr. You had police brutality cases. You had, of course, the LA riots that happened in 92. You had conscientious hip hop. So all these things were emerging, and you saw young people come to the forefront. The difference was it was more concentrated in the Black community. Yes, you had some white voices and brown voices helping to articulate the struggles, but now we're seeing more of a collectivism to push back and challenge the status quo.
It's interesting you point that out because for me, I mean, I was around during the 92 civil unrest out here in Los Angeles. And, when the people took to the streets, all of the action was in the Black community. And now, as a seasoned man, I'm watching the protest. I actually was out there when we marched in Long Beach, and I went up into Leimert Park. But when we saw the really heavy, intense property damage, it took place, as we say in LA, north of Wilshire. It wasn't our neighborhood. And this is what I see all across the country. And I would like to think that, I'm thinking that this is why we're seeing so much empathy from others outside of the Black community, because all of a sudden we are not having these actions in the hood, but it's over now. Y'all see it, instead of it's on TV, now it's right on your street. And I think, to me, that's what's spoken the loudest with people who do not look like us. And what do you think about that?
Yes, and it's interesting because here in Chicago, I mean, and I knew some youth who were involved in downtown Chicago, the Gold Coast, and they said, it started off very nonviolent, and people were upset and angry. And one young man told me that couple people walked up to him and said, "Hey, we've been nonviolent marching for years now. We're tired of it. I think they're going to hear us through violence and what we do down here." And he said, before you know it, things kind of went up. And then Chicago has these drawbridges downtown before you get to more of the exclusive areas of that part of the city, and they went up, right? And so they kind of block people off from going further. But I really believe that the actions of those young people, and unfortunately some criminal elements that took advantage of it, tearing up these spaces, cause people to be more concerned this time around. Not sure how that's separate from the Watts riots of the 60s and what happened after the murder of Dr. King. But one thing is clear, as Malcolm X used to say, unfortunately, when people are reactive to a point, to a degree of using force, meeting force with force, it gets people's attention, and we know Dr. King historically used to refer to Malcolm X in his meetings with the governmental officials, saying, "Hey, it's best you listen to me and work with my plan, because outside this door, there's another brother and he's not like me." And that helped push some of the policies in place in the 60s.
Yeah, it's interesting because my dad, I'm a child of the civil rights movement. And I mean, that's how we grew up under the, we shall overcome, right? And I remember my dad used to always say that, man, if Dr. King's plan fails, it's going to be all out revolution, because that's the only way. That's what he used to always say, interesting. Now, it's, let me ask you a question now. With the violence and the looting, what troubled me is that there are other elements out there who I believe want to ignite a race war. And I do believe it was what I personally observe as I walked among the people in the city of Long Beach, is there were people in those protests who were from outside of the community, who were organized. I overheard a couple of conversations myself where they were prepared for the tear gas. They had coolers full of, milk and all of that. And they were like, yeah, make sure you have the milk and all that. But after the tens of thousands of people walked through the city of Long Beach, peaceful protests, all the diversity, everything was a beautiful thing. That evening, it degenerated into violence and looting. Even one building in Long Beach was burned, the little suit shop over there. But even as I watched that burn on the news, it was clearly accelerants that was happening. I'm just saying there's provocateurs out there who are trying to stoke and damage even the message that these peaceful protests are having. And so I'm having a very large problem with that. But the general market really doesn't want to embrace the notion that there are provocateurs among us as we protest for, social justice.
And I agree with you. When MLK marched in Memphis, Tennessee, the first march he had there for the garbage workers who were on strike, the march started off peacefully, and Dr. King was leading it. Then all of a sudden, violence broke out. Businesses in that area started getting looted, and they rushed Dr. King off. And he got a lot of criticism for leading for the first time a violent march. But then we know years later that the FBI, according to William Peppers, an assassination plot to kill Dr. King, that the FBI paid some young people about $300 to go create the havoc, right, and to yell Black Power. And that stirred the actions that you saw with that protest. So it's very possible. And I wouldn't disagree with you at all.
Especially in such a time as this. Now you have what is that? That's an article that I saw in recent. First of all, shout out to Mr. Jawanza Kunjufu, who connected us. He's a longtime friend. I mean, I've had him on as part of a radio show that I was part of called Front Page, and he connected me with you, and I'm really excited. But looking forward to this conversation. And I see our good friend Dr. Daniel Walker out there giving you a shout out too. I see you guys must have a connection there. He's one of our favorite guests out here on Coffee Conversations. But you have an analysis of hip hop and social justice. Now, I love this particular subject because I watched the hip hop movement. I've been in the industry a long time. I can sense that I'm a little older than you there, but I've been in the industry as an executive, and I watched hip hop's emergence. I was there. I had a front row seat, and what I see now is I don't see the voices of consciousness in hip hop right now, and I might be missing something. I mean, I just don't hear it. I hear a lot of pornographic. I see, and I also know that the machinery of the industry has reached down and put a certain element of Black imagery out for the world to see. But I'm missing the part where the words, wherever it resides, whether it's on the underground or I got to look a little deeper, wherever it is, I'm not hearing the words, the message of social justice in hip hop anymore. And it troubles me because we're in such a time where we need that soundtrack of the movement. What do you think about that? Am I wrong? Am I just some old fart sitting around? I'm missing something or what?
No, I mean, you're right. I mean, the grassroots of hip hop, as we know, started off in the community, and it progressed a very powerful message about social conditions and how not to allow those social conditions to define you. In other words, your state of mind, your consciousness is going to give you the fuel necessary to rise above these conditions, right? And so Grandmaster Flash and brothers such as him, African Bambaataa, they, Gotta Throw in KRS One, they really had those powerful messages that resonated with the youth. Actually, they referred us to the books. I remember being young, and these brothers would throw out names of books, and I would go read them because I was like, wow, I need to figure out what they're saying here because this is deep. And so you saw that level of consciousness, and it's almost intentional, that the industry became co-opted and began resonating this, I want to say, thug life mentality in the music, and not taking away from what Tupac wanted to refer to as thug life, but that message of being nihilistic and being violent and being disrespectful in our communities and toward our women, it really took stronghold, and it's been etched in the music for a while. Now we've had Kendrick Lamar's, we've had J. Cole's, we've had Lupe Fiasco, we've had these great young men come out and speak on, just that through their music. Oh, Common, can't forget Common from Chicago, right?
Right.
But then here we have today almost a revitalization of that era coming forth. And I tell you what, I recently watched this video with Lil Baby, right? And Lil Baby, and my kids, they listen to Lil Baby. I'm like, well, man, I sound like my parents. Will you please cut that garbage off up in here, man? Or cut it down. Right. But Lil Baby recently had a piece, and it's hot. I need to get the name of the song for you. You have to listen to it. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And I was blown away from it, given the fact that he's saying in the lyrics, look, I know I've been wrong, right? But now it's time for a change. We have to make sure we get out there and vote. We have to make sure that we have better respect for each other. I was like, whoa. Mm-hmm. So I see a turning point here, which is a great thing.
Well, it's because if people get older, you start seeing things, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like, oh, okay, yeah. It's interesting you mentioned Tupac because, Tupac was also just an activist. This is how he was raised and everything, yeah, he had, the gangsterisms and whatnot. But I think he was just a very deep poet, in a way. And some of his records just probably didn't really make it to the mainstream, but they would really, speak on conditions and political actions that needed to happen, because that really at his core, was his consciousness. His mom was, Black Panther and everything like that. So yeah. And then it's Common. Yes, man. I just recently did a deep dive. I was reading something about Common. I can't remember, just something in the magazines or something. And I said, let me just get on YouTube. And I just went deep on all his music, and I was like, this brother right here is off the chain.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so Erica Badu made a comment the other day where she basically is calling out all the rappers to say, look, why don't we make some music about social justice, stop glorifying killing each other in the community. And, people are talking about it. I mean, it's kind of an aha moment in the hip hop industry. What do you think about that? One of their peers actually calling them out. And maybe she's not a peer as much as she is a mentor in these days. She's been at the game for a minute. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a paradigm shift happening. Oh, that Lil Baby song is called "The Bigger Picture," by the way.
The Bigger Picture. Let me see if I can find it while you share with the people.
Yes, and I think like we're seeing a paradigm shift. We're seeing people who for years have mentioned. I know Lupe Fiasco here from Chicago mentioned that he was actually in the studio about to produce a song, and he has his own lyrics and bars ready to go, and someone has already written the bars for him to say.
Wow.
And it's nothing that he believes in. He's like, look, I'm not doing this. I'm canceling this. But I think what we're seeing too, which is a part of my research and writing, lessons learned, critical conversations, hip hop, social justice, have to get that plug. Tupac and Biggie. I think young people have to re-engage that conversation with what happened between the two of them and how the media was very much a part of their demise because they profited off of their dispute. And guns are a huge problem in this country. And instead of looking at Tupac and Biggie as just another drive-by, gangster style shooting, it was deeper than that. And it was friends that got lost and they were upset at each other. But, Tupac was almost murdered at Quad Studio in a well-lit area. Nobody went to jail for that. And he was hurt and embittered by that for years. And tragically, he felt like he was set up and thereby, people meant to harm him. And I think that lesson oftentimes get lost with what Tupac went through. When we look at American history, Aaron Burr shot and murdered Alexander Hamilton over a dispute, over female gossip rumors, right? And so this is part of American history, beefs. How we settle beefs is the problem. And unfortunately, we live in a cancel culture. And so people have a way of dismissing you, disowning you, getting rid of you. And the gun, unfortunately, is one of the ways that we do that. And so, looking at Tupac and Biggie, we learn those lessons, but we also look at how the music and the gangsterism that came and surfaced from that was very dangerous. And look at Chicago now. Look at all the shootings that just happened this past weekend on Father's Day weekend. So the gun violence is a problem. And unfortunately, the music industry has helped to promote that. I think there's one music company that actually invests in prisons, right? And so for years, they have been putting out this type of music that's been very dangerous and harming to our communities, and they profit from it by investing in prisons. And this is a fact. I just can't think of the name of the music company now. So, yes, there needs to be a paradigm shift for our lives, for our sake, for our children's sake, so that we can continue this strong, powerful movement we have before us to make the changes we need.
As I mentioned to you, I've witnessed the emergence of hip hop, from when it first hit these streets. And I always I feel like the industry, the general market industry, when they began to discover that this format, this genre was going to be a hit, they began to reach down to the lowest of the low and put that up to the light and to the world to say, this is how the black male is. He's a gangster. He's a thug. This is how the music became. Because I'm going to tell you something. I think NWA and in LA, gang culture that's part of black community history. You go back to the Avenues, the Slossons, the Gladiator, all that before pre-Crips and Bloods, all that. But having said that, I think that expression of art, that is inside of the world of gangsters has its place, but the place is on the underground. You see, that should be that's their music, that's the art that they create based on the life that they live. But I think that the industry reached down and grabbed that and then elevated that up above the conscious in inspirational rap and put that out front. And that's just my opinion that I watched and I saw for my own self. Now, no disrespect to Snoop Dogg from Long Beach, where I'm at right now, none whatsoever. But if you recall, y'all, when he first came out, that first record, they were trying to ban him. It was the worst things worse. And now, if you look at 2020, he's one of the top American, not just Black American, but American pop culture icons. How does that happen?
And look, he's been able to popularize his longevity in the industry, and behind the scenes, he's also been doing the work in the community,
yes,
and helping to speak against some of the violent issues that we have seen, especially the murder of Tupac, who he loved, and he's been a very strong proponent against some of the violent gang activities that were initiated, and really, I hate to say this, but it's systemic. You intentionally under-resourced communities that are already historically marginalized, and you have other racial policies that hinder people from actually accessing opportunities, such as educational resources that are equitable, and people are going to become not only discontent, but also they will soon feel like this society is against them, and so they turn to other means to protect, to insulate, to also help them obtain some resources. And I have a dear friend of mine, Dr. Williams. He writes a lot about gangs and the study of gangs. He has a great book about the Blackstones, and he has another book coming out soon. But he especially shows how the gangs, when they originated, they were to protect the community, right? And protect the community from racism and from whites coming into Black areas and beating up and harassing Blacks and enabling Blacks to be able to go to different parks or areas of the city where they couldn't go before. And then again, that turned in a different direction. So I'm with you. I think that we have to learn about this history and use it to its fullness to better strengthen our resolve to, again, move forward, to progress, because that is part of our culture, right? But it also needs to be addressed with how do we change and support the turning of that around. And I know, remember in 92 that the Bloods and Crips got together.
Sure did.
They united, despite police forces fearing that, right? They came together.
Yeah. That peace treaty is really, really something. Now, here's a comment here we're getting from Brother Michael O'Quinn. He's a regular viewer here on Coffee Conversations. How you doing today, Michael? Saying he's 69 years old, and he thinks, for me, the first rappers were the last poets, and they rapped about Black awareness. I would agree with that, but I will say that, and this is probably, I'm starting to think we need to have a coffee conversation about, the music of Black America. But I will say that you can look at the art form of rap and go to the the signifying, which is in the music of the 30s and the 40s, and you can hear Cab Calloway and all them rhyming. And if you recall, the other day we had Mom Tokulur Mbaye from Senegal, and she was talking about how the griots and express themselves back in that West African region, and they still do this to that day. And this is, in a form of rap and rhyming and your style of how you talk about the king. If you recall, she talks about that. You can go on the webpage and see that past show too. So I think that's I think the expression of rap really is something that survived in our spirits from over the Middle Passage into our consciousness of today. That's what I believe.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, sir.
It's funny. The brother asked about the last four. So my father, whenever I would play this hip hop, he'd be like, "Man, will you cut that down, cut that off?" And he was like, "That's rap. It's really brothers talking with a beat. Here's the first brothers that did this, the last poets."
Yeah.
So he would put on those records. Yep.
Wow. 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 And
But
that's
you're right.
something.
It is a combination of jazz and
Hmm.
blues,
Hmm.
and that history of our music is always evolving.
Always evolving. Okay, so now, first of all, tell me the name of your book so I can put it up here with the social justice, and then I want to get into the flag conversation.
Yes, absolutely. So the first book is called Lessons Learned: Critical Conversations in Hip Hop and Social Justice. And then the next book is Here's to This Flag. Do you want me to go into a little bit about the hip hop book?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
get it. Okay,
Okay.
let's see. Hold on, I'm trying to type here. You said critical conversations
In hip hop and
in
social justice.
hip hop and social justice.
Right.
And you can get that at africanamerican.images.com.
Yes. And
Okay, go ahead. All right, let's get it.
all right. And so part of this conversation again is just to look at hip hop as a lens to examine critical societal issues, including gun violence, education, policing, economics, and the environment. And when I wrote this book, I was really initially concerned about the future, like many of us who, see a lot that's happening, and how our young people will help us promote a different change agency in our society. And so this book conversation about hip hop really is having a look at young people and how they are really challenging this apocalyptic world we live in. And this is before COVID-19. So we know we have climate change, we have environmental issues, we have excessive capitalism, we have very few people at the top that own so much and leaves very little for the rest of us. So I always felt that hip hop had a way of helping us to digest information and make sense out of our world, to better frame more optimism, to change society. So again, grew up listening to hip hop. I believe hip hop, before it was co-opted, was a music of the grassroots, and the history that it provided offered lessons to help us connect to how we can go about becoming part of the solution rather than part of the problem. So, in that breath, when I'm looking at why I wrote this book, I specifically target again some of the social justice messages that have always been etched in hip hop, and really how that intersected with the 1960s, when youth were proactive, engaging, and empowering. And also, again, speak about the Tupac and Biggie murder, and the issue of the Second Amendment. And I go in to talk about, really, with the Second Amendment, it was the militarization of the Constitution that said, look, it wasn't just about gun ownership; it was about protecting our property. And who were the property of the day? It was the enslaved people, the African people. And so militias were formed from the Second Amendment to not only uh, arm those militias, but also protect the property, who were the slaves of the day, from running away or causing rebellion. So, and I think in this breath, I believe that this is one of the most well-spoken chapters, because what I'm saying here is that, gun violence, when we look at gun violence and isolation of Black and brown communities, it's been a problem since the beginning. And I've already spoke about Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton. And I think the tragic lesson of Tupac and Biggie that we can see is that, gun violence just doesn't impact those families. It impacts a lot of people, and it's created a lot of damage in our world. And again, it wasn't just a Black on Black murder. It's a symptomatic of a large American societal issue of this cancel culture, which I really believe is part of the problem. And guess what? Here we go. This American society, when they get tired of you, they cancel you. And so we look at the murder of Malcolm X and Dr. King and Robert Kennedy during that time period. It really was some intentionality behind their murders. And the recent documentary on Malcolm X, of Who Killed Malcolm X, really shed light on William Bradley, and how he was able to walk away from the murder, literally live his life until he died, and that they knew Eugene Roberts, who was working with the Boss organization, knew that Malcolm X was going to be murdered, and reported that to the FBI, and they did nothing, and they stood by and watched it happen. Very similar to Tupac and Biggie's death. And so these issues are here, but young people, when we look at the Parkland Six, we look at other movements that are happening, they are protesting, they're saying, look, we're going to change this. So I really believe that this is a new world. And I use particular songs through the book to communicate that. Like Nas, If I Rule the World, I explore how that song helps to promote more positivity over negativity. And Public Enemies, of course, the classic Fight the Power, right? To challenge the status quo. We're in that movement right now. We're seeing that manifest clearly right now. So those are some of the conversations that I have while looking at social justice movements and how youth are impacting them.
Let's dissect the Tupac and Biggie piece there. It's interesting because, they haven't solved those murders yet. And I'd like to add I'm asking, first of all, I was at the party when Biggie was killed. I was at that party.
Wow.
And I'm going to tell you something, as many industry parties, as long as I've been in this industry, that was one of the flyest parties like in history. We were in the Peterson Automotive Museum, all those classic cars. The vibe was cool. I mean, it was just a whole nother thing happening in there. And, we were all happy because, yes, there had been this East Coast, West Coast beef and Tupac and Biggie. And we were really happy in the community that Biggie was going to come to town. Okay, all right. We're about to bury the hatchet and everything like that. And then, I remember the party got so packed and the fire marshals closed it down, and I left, and Biggie's entourage was literally right behind me. I went and got in my little car, and I knew how to get out of the area without turning onto Fairfax. It was a little alley in the back, and went on home. Did not know that he had been shot and killed until I woke up the next morning and turned on the radio, and I heard it. It was like, whoa, I was just with him, But okay, for you, here's a question there, Dr. Ali. Who killed Biggie?
Yeah, and so I want to just kind of read from.
He said, yes.
So there's a part in here where I have the N-word. Remember when Chris Rock talked about the N-words got shot, those N-words? Yeah. And so I break that down and talk about how this was more symptomatic of our society, right? And cancel culture. And so, we know Viola Smalls actually filed a lawsuit against the LAPD police department because she alleged that they had two participants that went about the murder of her son. And so in saying that, I should know this off the top, right? But want to get to that part in the book real quick. And what she alleged was that there was a mob blood Pyru contract on her son. And so there were supposedly two LA off-duty dirty cops, Harry Billups, aka Amir Muhammad, and David Mack, right? And so both persons worked for Suge Knight as bodyguards for Death Row. And so they when she filed the lawsuit, they hired someone to go ahead and investigate to see if her claim was valid, and that was Russell Poole. And he did the research and the gathering, and not only did he discover the Impala, the dark Impala that Mac owned, but he also believed that they were not only involved in the shooting, but there were some eyewitnesses that kind of saw them there at the party that night. And so, but why isn't that used with all the research out there, with all the documentaries, the movies? How come these individuals have not been arrested?
Well, Dave Mack dead now.
Yeah, Dave Mack dead now, right?
Dead, yes. Okay, so the just as a sidebar for everybody, if you want to revisit that mystery while we're on quarantine, there is the miniseries is on. I can't remember which channel, but it's on your TV, Netflix, Amazon, one of them, because I watched
Mm-hmm.
it. It was very, very fascinating to watch it. It's like about 10 parts to it, but really, really, really incredible stuff. All right. So then who killed Tupac?
Well, that's the thing. So Pac, according to a lot of historians, well, not historians, but people who've done research as well,
Mm-hmm.
Tupac, when he was murdered, and I want to get to that part real quick, but they call him Lil Baby, and
Yes.
so apparently the night of where they were at the casinos in Las Vegas, and of course one of the Bloods had claimed that one of the Crip members who were there had robbed him of his chain
Yeah.
and death row chain, so they
Yeah.
attacked him. Of course, that's on video footage.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Uh-oh. Yeah.
So after that melee, apparently those individuals, Keefe D, got together. Orlando Patterson is who I'm thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
Orlando Patterson, his uncle Keefe D, and another person in his entourage, they went that night looking to find Tupac and Suge Knight, and they actually went to first the studio where they were supposed to hang out like an after set, but they waited, they didn't show up, and then they saw them leaving. They saw Tupac out the car waving. Girls were like, "Hey, Pac!" And they followed him, and then that's when they went by the side of his car in that white car, and apparently that's when Orlando Patterson did the shooting and killing of Tupac.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what we see happening though is, unfortunately, the police are involved or threaded through these conversations.
Well, it's interesting. I'm going to give an abstract reaction to what you just said. So now, we hear the cry, defund the police. And for me, maybe just because I'm just, a seasoned guy, one of the elders now sitting on the porch, but I was like, well, you know what? You need the police. Okay, doggone it. Because there's some situations and circumstances out there. And I think that what ends up happening with the police is they need, their culture and their life. Just think about if you and I were, gang detectives and we've been on the job for, for some years, right? We would have relationships that are essentially friendly because with gang members, because we have been trying to chase them, we have been trying to, it's a life that has been intertangled out here on these here streets. And so, maybe, that inside of that, the way human nature would be to keep things silent, wouldn't, okay, we don't speak about that in honor of that lifestyle. I know that sounds really abstract, but I'm just thinking out loud based on what you said.
Yeah, I mean, we need the police. It's our relationship with the police that's been the problem from day one. And again, going back to that Second Amendment and some of the construction of policing in this country has always been designed to, as Huey P. Newton said, to treat the Black community as a colony and the police force as like a colonial army, right? And so that's unfortunately how they have been utilized in our community. But if you go overseas, and you're like the UK, and don't get me wrong, this is not idealistic, and they have their own issues, but there's more of a community policing approach applied. There's more of a cerebral kind of interaction that they have with people. They don't carry guns. They may have the stick, but they are trying to talk you through some stuff. They are trying to communicate with you. And I've experienced witnessing this when I was in the UK in the summer a couple years ago. And I saw a couple of interactions and I was like, wow, they dealt with that totally different than what they do in the States, particularly with Black and brown communities. So, yeah, and I think when we say defund the police, because I've heard this as well, they're saying to reappropriate money. Maybe they need to say reappropriate or another terminology, because the defund subtracts from the validity of the argument. But yeah, put the police in different areas of the city, use them more wisely. Don't have them do traffic stops. Why are they doing traffic stops with all these cameras we have? Just mail people their tickets. I mean, and that will kind of reduce some of the tension. but have them walk the streets, have them talk to the people, and be non-threatening to the community that they've been unfortunately very harmful toward for far too long. New Jersey, they did something similar to defund the police, and it's a better interaction with the community and policing. So I think that's what people are really arguing about. Lastly, I think they really do need to rotate these officers like they do in the military. Every 6 months, you take it out of that hot spot and put somewhere else where you can kind of, recollect yourself, mentally recoup, maybe get some therapy before we put you back in the hot zone, because some of these areas are hot and they get burned out.
Right. Well, I think that's actually a good idea. I hadn't heard that concept before, but yeah, rotate the police out of their different areas is good. But I also think that once we put all of these great concepts and policies in place, we still have to work on the individual soul, because I actually believe the hatred that we see is an individual thing that they were raised with, has been programmed with, and I think race hate is given unto people from the time that they were a child. And if we can change all the policies we want, but if we can't change the hearts of people, we're going to still be dealing with the same thing 20 years from now.
That's exactly what George Wallace, who I don't like quoting, by the way, maybe his elderly years, George Wallace, but not that young guy. He said that when they were passing a lot of civil rights legislation. He said exactly what you said.
Wow, isn't that something? Okay, all right. So let's kind of wrap up the lessons learned, critical conversations in hip hop and social justice. You guys can get that at AfricanAmericanImages.com. We'll put that back up in a minute. And I did find Lil Baby, and we'll close the show out with that. But I want to ask you a little bit about. All right, so now Tupac and Biggie, they're gone. These voices, Nas is man. This guy is really leveraging his income, being a tremendous investor out there in technology and everything. And who is the voice of the hip hop community in this present time?
Well, some would definitely say J. Cole. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of great things that J. Cole. Can't take away from Jay-Z.
Right.
I mean, Jay-Z, his money, his prowess, his intellect behind the scenes, the work he's doing, definitely he is still in the game doing his thing with being an influencer. You mentioned Nas, and I think you over there on the West Coast, my brother Kendrick Lamar does a lot of great work.
Yep, Compton City G.
Yes. So got to give it up to those brothers, and I know there's many more out here. Lupe Fiasco in Chicago has an organization that I was part of and does great work in urban areas. So yes, they're artists. I think everybody has their role to play, and I think that's what Erykah Badu was ultimately saying. Like there's no one leader anymore, right? There's not that one person. Even the protests that I've been to, there's young people out front. I love it. I'm in the background. And they're leading, and I think that day of just having that one spokesperson, that's over with. I think each of us have a role to play here in making change.
You mentioned Lupe Fiasco. He has a song called "Dumb It Down." You guys can go on YouTube and see it. And when you hear that record, man, it's really, really, really profound, and it's a kind of a commentary on how they take these images like we're discussing, they take as they want to dumb it down to make us look like we're less than intelligent, less class. The whole thing is called "Dumb It Down" by Lupe Fiasco. Really, really good record there. Kendrick Lamar, love him, man. He is really, really, really incredible. Now, you mentioned Jay-Z. So, all right. So Jay-Z has leveraged his influence. He got in there with the NFL, turned that into a contract, which personally, I'm not mad at him just being a business person, but he took a lot of heat for that. What do you think were his motives? Do we need a Jay-Z having a seat at the table? Did he sell out? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think, and that's part of my flag book. Here's this flag of mine. When you compromise, that's part of compromise is negotiation. So there are concessions that you have to have. you know, you look at every major war that's ever happened in world history, both sides have to compromise. They have to give in concessions to be able to reach an agreement or a treaty or truce. I think Jay-Z is doing the best work he can in terms of being at that table. We need people at the table. Like Dr. King, one of the great things that he did with the whole civil rights movement was saying, look, we're going to fight for you to have these opportunities, right? To get in these corporations, to get on these corporate boards, to get these jobs that you've been denied for so long. But when you get in there, don't forget your people. Don't forget that you still have to represent them and you need to fight for them, that you should not just completely assimilate and I got mine, Clarence Thomas syndrome, and forget everybody else.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right? We're not putting our lives on the line for that to happen. And so I think in the spirit of that, Jay-Z is advocating and fighting the best fight he can. But we also got to support people who are in these positions. It's just not up to them. Again, that single-minded leadership, we have to get behind them. We have to support them. We have to talk to them and have critical conversations about what's needed.
So here we have Jay-Z at the table. He's advocating on behalf of Brother Colin Kaepernick and the other guys that decided to take a knee during the national anthem. There's a national discourse where people, mainly white people, think that is dishonoring the flag by them taking a knee, but it's really not about that. It's really pointing out to, about this police abuse that's happening all across. I mean, time and time again, we see it in the news, we see the videos and everything like that. So Jay-Z comes to the table, he fights, he negotiates, he's at the table. And I'm sure no one saw this coming. Here we go. Now we see the video of George Floyd. The NFL is like, holy crap, he was right. What if you were a fly on the wall, what would you imagine they're talking about now? Because I'm sure they didn't see this. I'm sure the imagery of George Floyd blindsided them in the NFL. What do you think they're talking about now?
Well, Roger Goodell, who's the owner, I mean, not the owner, but he represents the owners. He did a 180. And to get him to do a 180, I'm sure they had conversations about being able to continue to market their league, because that was the original summation why they went against Kaepernick, or I don't like saying blackballed him, but they restricted him from being a player in the NFL. Partly, I think a lot of it is they want to be on the right side of history. They don't want to be identified as people who stood in the way of change. And then look, 70% of the players are black in the NFL. So initially they were like, oh, this is going to hurt our league. It's going to hurt our brand. And that wasn't true, because it never was about the flag. It never was.
Now, what is the premise of your book, This Flag of Mine?
So, and I love the hat you got on, brother. So,
yes, sir.
And I think
10 years.
Yes, and my pops was a Marine, and I think like we, Black people, African American people, we are indigenous to America. We've been here from the beginning, when when the colonies existed under the British, and we helped the British. We helped the colonists win the war against the British. Now, some of us jumped sides because we like, look, this is an opportunity to get back at our slave masters, right? Yeah. But we have been patriotic from the beginning. And so this patriotism, this definition of patriotism has taken on a white nationalist rhetoric. And really a patriot, by definition, is one who fights for social justice, who fights for change, right? Who goes against something that's wrong and harmful and tries to reform it. That's a patriot. A loyalist now goes with the status quo. So when we talk about patriotism, we're talking about people who fight for change, who want to make this nation better. And African Americans have always stood on the front line of doing that, fighting this nation's, all of its wars from the beginning, being an indigenous population, and constantly trying to push this country to love us as much as we love it.
It's interesting because when I get in heated discussions about race relations and social justice with my folks from the other side of town, I have to say, I said, well, you can't call me unpatriotic because I was United States Marine Corps, and my father before me was United States Navy. So stop it. And you really have to, let people go. We got a question coming in here from Patricia Mitchell. What's up, Patricia? Saying, do you think the NASCAR is doing the same thing in support of Bubba Wallace, trying to be on the right side of history?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Those Confederate flags should have been taken down. First of all, the one they're flying is not the original Confederate flag. There were 13 replicas. That's the 13th one. And the original Confederacy flag at the bottom, it says to preserve slavery, to maintain it. So, come on. Like, if we really want to look at the Confederacy flag, it is treasonous. These were people who were not only terrorists, but they fought a war against the U.S. government. So clearly they should not have a flag honoring the Confederacy. Look, I've been to Germany. There's hardly anything about Hitler.
Right?
When you go to the Reichstag, and I know I'm mispronouncing it, but they have a small section about Hitler, which is the Capitol building where Hitler took off. And they look, we were wrong. We were incorrect. This is unfortunately a part of our history, but we're not honoring it.
That's
we
right.
need to do the same thing here. And in Germany, if you say anything that has anything to do with Nazis, you can go to jail. You can get fined, right?
Wow.
For being prejudiced and racist toward Jewish people or whomever. So we need to do the same thing. There's no statues of Hitler in Germany, and there should be no statues of these guys who were treasonous. So yes, I agree.
The commandant of the Marine Corps, the brand new commandant of the Marine Corps, outlawed the Confederate flag being displayed among Marines. And it's really funny because someone was asking me about that. It's like, why would they do that? Because there is a culture of people from, of Southern Americans where that flag it's real it's everything to them. And it's not uncommon to walk around the barracks and find, a guy with the Confederate flag hanging in his room in the barracks, or, having that allegiance to the Confederacy. And that's an interesting dynamic because you're right. That's treasonous.
Yeah, you lost the war, dude.
Right.
You lost. And Black people, according to Dr. Lerone Bennett, before the Mayflower, and I forget the last text he wrote about forced to glory. It was forced to glory. Like he said, it was African Americans, Black soldiers that made a difference in the war.
All right. So when I'm reading this flag of mine, we're going to be exploring all of these topics right here. And then what is the point that you want the public to really walk away in that text?
Yeah, that Black people are patriots by definition. Our history is patriotic. That before even the Mayflower got here, there were African people from Mali, and some say Mandinka, that came to this part of the world in 700 BC, and I'm sorry, 700 ACE, and settled in the Mexico City area. And so we have always been present here. And the bottom line is we are human beings that deserve proper treatment. We need equal access to all of the opportunities because we help to create the opportunities, because this nation would not exist without us. And I think lastly, I think the major thing I'm saying is that we've had heroes and sheroes who have been the best of patriots, from Dr. King, Malcolm X, Fannie Lou Hamer. These were the greatest patriots. They should be right there with Benjamin Banneker and Thomas Jefferson.
Yes, man. It's fascinating discussion this morning. We got to get out of here, but I got to tell you something there, Dr. Sunni Ali. I'm going to invite you back. We want to draft you into our legion of resident intellectuals so that we could, analyze this walk that we're in out here. And we always want to have, the academics to come on and, cause us a level deeper of consciousness and a level of deeper thought as we see what's going on in this critical time in our community. I mean, you know what? Like I said at the top of the show, it's unprecedented what we are seeing right now, and we need to have a understanding and research and topics with folks like yourself who this is what we do. We sit and we think, deep thinkers about this, and we're very, very proud of you, young brother. Thank you so much for coming on. Now, this flag of mine, that's one of the books. You can get that on AfricanAmericanImages.com, and we'll put that on our Facebook pages and on BeachCityRadio.com. The other book is Lessons Learned: Critical Conversations in Social Justice and Hip Hop. That's also on AfricanAmericanImages.com. Dr. Sunni Ali, how can we get a hold of you directly?
Oh, please reach out to me via email at my NEIU email, which is asunni at NEIU.edu. Email. Love to take emails. And yeah, love to continue this conversation. I love your show, and I really am honored and humbled by being on here.
Oh man, thank you. I'm humbled and honored that you would join us, and this is really a great conversation. There's a few more topics that we could do. We could make a whole another hour of this conversation.
Yes.
Very cool, man. Very cool. Thank you so much for coming on, y'all. You got the information. We'll post that up there. Get with Dr. Sunni Ali. Get the books. Please get the books and just let's go deep with this thing. Thank you, brother, so much.
Thank you
for coming on. And everybody, hey, listen, it's a tough time out there. We do know it's a tough time, but I think that, love one another. Just love one another. I think that's the key. We'll keep on going. Just love one another. All right, y'all. All right. Peace and blessings.